Ruin My Childhood.
Thank you for listening to Ruin My Childhood, the podcast where we decide if some things are better left in the past. I'm Mike.
And I'm Kat.
What are we going to be talking about today?
Can't Hardly Wait.
Can't Hardly Wait. What do you remember about this movie?
Oh, it was one of those teen dramedies that sort of kicked off the teen movie craze.
Yeah, absolutely. It was like this. I was going to say She's Just Not That Into You, but it's not that one.
She's All That.
She's All That. Thank you. It was this one and that one, and I think this was really trying to be She's All That. I don't know which one came out first, but I know She's All That was huge, and I think this was really trying to do it, and I don't think it got to that level, but I definitely remember watching this at a birthday party for the first time, and I remember a lot of people talking about this movie, specifically Seth Green, but I don't really remember much about this movie. Do you remember anything about the plot at all?
It's a coming-of-age story right after graduation, and it has Jennifer Love Hewitt's boobs.
That's what I remember for the most part. I remember Seth Green being in it, and really I remember the overall plot. Like, the guy writes a letter to Jennifer Love Hewitt, like he's in love with her but never talked to her, and the whole movie he's trying to get her the letter, I think. And then I just remember there's a nerdy kid who sings Guns N' Roses.
Oh, I do remember that scene.
And that's really all I remember. Like, I remember Lauren Ambrose is in this, Ethan Embry's in it, but I don't remember any of the side plots, or I just remember the overall plot, nothing,
right.
None of the details.
We remember that we liked it.
Yeah. I've got a couple comments on the social medias. You want to read the first one? You're going to have to find a way to censor it a little bit.
The first one is from Monica Miner 87. It says, OMG, this was my favorite movie, LOL. The best part is when Mike is crying because someone called him an FAG. And I think Boys to Men is playing in the background. So this was back in the day where you called people gay as a joke. And people still thought it was funny.
I mean, it was the late 90s.
It was a different time, which is hilarious because, you know, when we excuse our racist 60-year-old uncle, we say it's a different time. And even this wasn't that long ago, and it was a different time.
Right. I mean, Friends gets a lot of kind of flack right now because of some of the
even
homophobic
30 Rock
stuff. 30 Rock, the first
30 Rock
season
hasn't
had some
aged
stuff.
well.
Yeah.
And where we started to get rid of gay jokes, we still had transphobic jokes.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the only other one I got was from Dylan, and it just says, I remember some nerdy kid rocking out to Sweet Child of Mine.
Sweet Child of Mine.
That's a Guns N' Roses song.
I don't think that's the song that's playing.
We'll watch it. I think that is.
I don't think so.
I don't know. We'll figure it out.
All right.
I think we should just go watch the movie.
Yeah, get into it.
Time to get freaky!
Their first night of freedom.
He is the most dope guy in school. Yeah, and school's over.
Was their last chance
Amanda?
to say what they want.
God, you're a hottie. Hey, can I see you naked?
Do what they feel.
Maybe I should wear the hat. Listen here, Hootie. Hootie!
And be who they are.
I wonder how William was doing at the party.
I can't feel my legs. I can't feel my legs!
Can't Hardly Wait. Rated PG-13. Opens everywhere June 12th.
Okay, we're back. We just watched Can't Hardly Wait, and this was definitely a 90s movie.
I mean, my first note for the intro is it radiates 90s energy.
I put 90s guitar was my first note.
90s guitar. And it did this thing that I think a lot of films fell back on in that area to fill in where they didn't have enough plot or they just needed to pad their running time. There's a really long montage in the intro of all these high school graduates sitting at their commencement ceremony. And it's a whole bunch of short monologue clips and just panning footage.
Yeah, so this was, all that stuff was done by the writer and director of the movie. All the female voices were one of the writers and directors, and the male voice was one of the other ones.
Oh, they're all the same
They're
few
the
people.
same couple people just going back and forth, just saying different things. They're all talking about the party and rumors of some guy being naked under their gown.
And Amanda getting dumped.
And Amanda getting dumped by Mike. Oh, man.
Scenes like this make me glad that I skipped high school.
And honestly, I don't remember really having high school people talk about things like this, like they're doing in that movie. And this was definitely a big thing in the movies. I think they did this in She's All That as well. Mm-hmm. I almost think they did do this in the opening things as well, talking about the breakup.
Right. It's a bit of an exposition dump. and also to pad the running time. And it goes on about 3 times as long as it really needed to.
It's like 3 or 4 minutes.
Yeah, it's really long. And I kind of wonder how it held anyone's attention for that long.
I don't know.
People didn't get up and walk out of the theater.
Right.
You know who I forgot was in this?
Who?
One of the vampires from Twilight.
Isn't it the dad vampire?
It's the dad vampire.
Carlisle?
Yeah, which is hilarious because he grew up to look so distinguished. And in this, you're like, oh, he's total bro.
Yeah, he was playing a bro in this movie
hilarious.
for sure. Do you want to give the listeners our kind of 90-second elevator pitch for this movie? Just summarize it real quick. Now that we've watched it.
I feel like I'm going to give so much away in this. A coming-of-age story about a group of teens excited after their high school graduation, making misguided plans, and one young man operating entirely on delusional-based love for a girl who doesn't know he exists.
Yeah, this movie, for me, definitely didn't age well in terms of that. Like, there's a lot of incel culture kind of going on in this movie.
But we've found this a lot when we go back and examine old material, that there are so many films that are built entirely around someone's imagined connection with a woman.
Yeah, absolutely. So we covered Disturbia on Remake Rewind, and there's a scene in that movie where the guy is basically just spying on all of his neighbors the whole movie, and he's spying on this hot girl. And she's kind of mad at him for doing it, but then talks about how she crinkles her nose when she reads and all these little things that you can only know if you're really paying attention. But it's still inherently creepy. It's not
really
sweet.
Creepy. Well, and it's the difference between, like, you might notice those things about a platonic friend and be like, oh, it's one of their isms. And just, it's charming because it's part of them. But it takes it to a level of obsession that is just disgusting.
It's weird. So I kind of want to talk about one of the things that took me out of this movie several times.
What, all the 30-year-old freshmen?
Well, but that's of the time. Movies were doing that forever. It wasn't really until like the last 5 or 6 years they started getting people who look like high school students to be in high school movies.
Well, and because the principal actors were in their 30s, they were able to let some 45-year-old BG slide in.
No, all the Smash Mouth is what took me out.
Oh, God.
Now, what's weird is it came up 4 times in the whole movie.
Why?
Smash Mouth. Only 2 songs, though. They repeated the songs.
I hate that band so much.
And it wasn't even their biggest song. It was Walking on the Sun and, I can't remember the other one. But it was only...
get enough of you.
Yeah, I can't get enough of you, baby. So the whole plot of this movie is Preston obsessed with Jennifer Love Hewitt's character. And what I was in love with Jennifer Love Hewitt in this era from, the late 90s to the mid 2000s as, a young preteen and young teenage boy. Mm-hmm. So I kind of get it, but what was weird about this movie, and I didn't go back and look at any promotions for this from, like trailers before the movie came out, but they did this whole thing where you don't actually see Jennifer Love Hewitt for probably 15, 20 minutes in the movie.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Even though her character's in it quite a bit. So there's this whole weird montage scene of all the different times he's run into her over the years. And then he tells this story of how they met and how he was this close to being his girlfriend, or she was this close to being his girlfriend because the one day he missed the bus. So he had to get to school late, and she was there late because it was her first day. And he noticed she had a Pop-Tart in her bag, and it's the same type of Pop-Tart that he likes. And he just raised his hand just a little too slow to be the person who got to show her around school. And the person who did was Mike, who was the jock. And he became her boyfriend. And so if he raised his hand half a second faster, he would have been the boyfriend, which that assumes a lot.
It assumes so much.
But it was also weird because he broke the fourth wall in this scene.
Yeah.
And it's the only time, and he looks directly at the camera. He's eating a sandwich in class that he was late to and
Rude.
Talking to us. It doesn't make any sense. And then throughout the whole scene, you see every time he looks at her, somebody passes a binder or a notebook or lifts up a backpack, or she dips down to look into a backpack. And I don't understand why they kind of hid her for so long.
Yeah.
And then
it was odd. I think it was supposed to build up the anticipation of how perfect and beautiful and idealized she is. And, she is gorgeous.
Yeah, absolutely.
She's absolutely beautiful. But then when they do finally reveal her, they basically make glamour shots of every single medium or close-up of her in the entire film. So everyone else
Yeah.
can have completely normal lighting, and then they straight up put a filter on the lens.
Yeah,
and,
like a soft focus kind of
and they
portrait.
light her completely differently from people who are in the exact same scene as her.
Yeah, it was a little jarring because they would go back and forth between her hot friends. So like Jamie Presley was one of her like super hot friends, and you'd go to them and it looked like soap opera kind of lighting, and then you go to her and it was just like, oh, she's on a runway.
Yeah.
In the same, they're supposed to be sitting right next to each other. It was a little weird. And to your point, they kind of had the yearbook photos that pop up every time a major character was introduced, and it would have their yearbook quote, you know, what clubs they were in, and everybody's was popped up for maybe 2 to 3 seconds. Hers was up on the screen for 10 seconds.
Right.
It was a little weird.
It just goes to reinforce that she's supposed to be this idealized angel, and everyone in the school is interested in her business because she's hot.
She is hot. I'm not gonna lie.
They really drive that point home. Like, everyone's supposed to be wet for this chick.
And so what's a little weird about this movie is it's an ensemble film, but I don't think any one character's plot or side story really could drive a movie on its own, other than Preston's, who's Ethan Embry, who's supposed to be the main character, and he's barely in the movie.
I disagree. I think Lauren Ambrose and Seth Green are such talented actors that their storyline held my attention the longest. It's just not enough material to build an entire film
Correct.
around.
Yes, and it just seemed like everything was such a side story to the main piece, which is the Preston one, but Ethan Embry really wasn't that interesting in this movie.
Ethan Embry was terrible. And he played it the way a lot of awkward young
He's just aloof.
young protagonists were portrayed in this era of being kind of bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and overeager and kind of living in a fantasy, except he does it to such extent that he seems like he might be mentally slow and therefore maybe a touch dangerous.
Well, and the thing about this is I looked it up because I thought it was a little weird. It turns out he doesn't remember this movie. He was stoned the entire time.
All right, well, that explains a lot.
He never read the script. He
What?
only read the pages that he was on, and he's never seen the movie.
Right, like, when you watch him in this film, you get the sense that he is acting his hardest. There isn't a whole lot of genuine honesty and connection in the moment. It's a lot of performing for camera and being starry-eyed and in La La Land.
I agree, and what's kind of weird, the promotions for this stuff, at least like the still images, the posters, and all that kind of stuff, I've already started doing some of our social media posts for this episode, and he is sidelined on all of them. Like, a lot of the posters for this movie, you only see half his face. Half of them's off the frame, and he's in the bottom right corner. All the posters are Jennifer Love Hewitt and the Twilight dude.
Yeah, because you have to get people into the theater, and you do that with attractive
With the good-looking people.
Not with Ethan Embry.
Right. I guess we got to talk about the nerdy kid. He was probably the next biggest plot point in the movie.
What was his name?
His name was William.
So William, I think when you shine the light of 2020 on him, is a little scary. There are a lot of scary characters in this. He has an entire shrine in his basement to how miserable his high school experience was.
Yep.
He has all these failed science experiments. He has pretty much every negative interaction he has had with a popular kid. He has some kind of token to that.
Yeah. It's super weird.
And he and his friends are, of course, obsessed with
X-Files.
with the X-Files. Rude. Of course. But they're just... when we look at them in today's light, oh, there's a bunch of incels.
Yeah. And what's interesting about this character, this was Charlie Korsmo, who played Jack in Hook.
Right.
This was his first and last acting credit after Hook.
Oh.
And he wasn't even originally cast in it. So they actually originally cast Adam Bird, who was the kid in Jumanji. And apparently he just wasn't doing a good job, so they cut him.
Replaced him with a different child actor.
They replaced him with a different child actor. They kept one shot of the original actor because it was him carrying the ladder to where they were doing their little stakeout, and you couldn't see his face anyway.
I feel like that must have stung even more because child actors, there are so few who actually stick around in Hollywood. So if someone's been acting since they were a kid, they've been in the same room auditioning with the exact same people
kids.
Hundreds of times. So these dudes had to have been in so many audition rooms together. And then to know
have
that
this happen.
That dude got your part.
Yeah.
It's gotta sting even more when you've had so much interaction with them.
What's weird is even though this is a side plot, I feel like this was probably the most fleshed out story. in terms of his interaction. So throughout...
Well, and his motivations were a little more clear.
Yeah. So throughout this movie, you see him interacting with his nerd friends, and they're supposed to be hanging out on top of a shed, or I think it was a pool house or guest house, whatever. And the whole thing is William is supposed to go to the party, blend in, and trick Mike and at least one of his bros into going over the pool house. They're supposed to jump off the roof, somehow knock out these two guys, chloroform them, which that's terrifying. Chloroform that they built in a chem lab, and take off their clothes and pose them in gay photos. Bringing up your homophobic stuff earlier.
Like, the worst thing they can do to these guys is make them look gay. All right.
And so that's it. And so he even has like this little laminated pamphlet that shows how many drinks he can have without getting drunk, but he's never had any alcohol before, so he gets drunk off of like one beer, which he has the scene that's pretty funny. His voice is way deeper than I thought it would be looking at him. So like everything he says is a little funny, but he has this thing where he drinks the beer, spits it out, and he's just like, the beer's terrible. It's gone bad. Don't drink the beer. And everyone's like, no, tastes like beer, buddy. And he gets drunk and then just becomes the coolest guy at the party. Like, everybody's liking what he's saying.
He lets loose.
He rocks out to the Guns N' Roses song, and girls start flashing him and getting jealous that he's making out with people. And then he has a heart-to-heart with Mike at some point, and we'll go in Mike's story, I'm sure, but he has this heart-to-heart moment with Mike because Mike breaks down and he realizes he has nothing out after he leaves high school. They kind of have a bro down. They end up going to the pool house together, forgetting about that trap because he's drunk, and they end up in jail doing the gay stuff. I don't know, like what they're in jail, and then Mike ends up taking the rap for it, and then William goes.
No. They don't go to jail for doing the gay stuff. As you said, they go to jail because the police break up a party of a whole bunch of high school graduates who are underage, and they are passed out in compromising positions, and they just happen to be the easiest people for the cops to pick up.
I mean, the cops definitely made some comments about it, though.
Doing the gay stuff.
So anyway, you think that they're going to end up being friends because they have like a heart-to-heart moment, and Mike apologizes for everything that he's ever done to Will.
Right.
Will changes, and he's like, maybe I was part of the problem, maybe I didn't try to fit in, and I thought I was better. And there's some actual growth.
Which is like a summary of every freaking incel's healing that they could go through, yet choose not to.
Right. And so he ends up finding the bros at the end of the movie at this diner. They all end up at this diner at the end of the movie. And he goes to try to be friends, and Mike kind of like, get out of here, weirdo. And then it kind of just starts from scratch again. Like, we'll go into it, but at the end of the movie, they have like the little text that pops up and tells you where all the characters are now.
Right.
And basically, he goes back to where he was. Like, he's still popular at the end of the movie at college, but he kind of goes on and doesn't get along with the jocks anymore, which I don't know how I feel about that.
But then he starts a successful tech company, right?
Right.
He goes to MIT and makes it big.
Yeah, exactly. And the actor himself was actually going to MIT when this was filming.
For law?
I guess so.
He's a lawyer now.
Yeah, he's a lawyer now.
Oh.
Who do you want to talk about next, Mike or Seth Green's character?
I love Seth Green. I love Seth Green more than I should now that I've watched Entourage, because I feel like there's so much truth in that show that I don't want to grapple with.
Right. I feel like he's playing an exaggerated version of himself in Entourage, obviously.
So this was the first movie that I'd really seen him in anything, or at least that he made an impression in, because he's been acting pretty much his entire life. He just did this so well.
As a kid, I definitely identified with Seth Green's character.
Well, and we all knew that one kid who like thought he was black.
But he was white.
But not even just thought he was black. Thought he was specifically like a Rasta.
Yeah, well, it was weird. He had like this weird lisp as well, and people kept calling it saying, you know you're white, right? The thing that threw me with Seth Green, though, was looking at the cover of the DVD for this on Netflix or whatever, the thumbnail for it. He has black hair. And I've already started doing the social media stuff, and all the posters for this, he has black hair, but in this movie it was red, and it threw me.
Well, no, I think the scenes in daylight, you can tell it's red, and then the indoor lighting, it's dark, which is a problem that I always have on set, because redheads are like these weird color-shifting chameleons, depending on the lighting.
I actually looked it up, and it's actually because the promotional stuff was done after they finished the movie, and he was already moving on to the second Austin Powers movie where he has black hair.
Even in the footage, like the scene in the scene in the bathroom, his hair looks completely
it does
different
look darker,
from
but it
daylight
threw
scenes.
me because the stills are black.
He's probably like, you guys had your chance with me. I'm working on other stuff.
Yeah, I'm not dyeing my hair.
Right. Melissa Joan Hart was in this movie because she was in everything for some unexplained reason. Like, how is she still so employed?
So what's weird about this, she was huge at the time because she had Drive Me Crazy, which was another one of those teen dramas that came out this year.
She was like 35.
She was 23 when this came out.
She looked 35.
I know. She was filming Sabrina the Teenage Witch at this time, and so she was doing these were night shoots almost the entire movie, so she was having really, really long days, so she was taking vitamin B12 shots all day to stay energized because she was supposed to be playing this peppy character, and apparently she offered these B12 supplements to Jennifer Love Hewitt, and she was convinced that Melissa Joan Hart was trying to drug her.
Wow. You know, I can see that because I think somewhere in Melissa Joan Hart's head, she imagined herself to be a comparable actress to Jennifer Love Hewitt.
I mean,
but you know,
she may have the bigger career.
You got to give it to the girl for working so hard to give us what we didn't want. More Melissa Joan Hart.
Yeah, her character was just a throwaway joke for the entire movie. She was just trying to get every person.
Her career was a throwaway joke.
Aww.
I mean, it's way better than mine, but still.
She just does like directing of like Hallmark Channel movies now.
Good for her.
So yeah, her whole plot was just trying to get every senior to sign the yearbook, and everyone just kind of throws the yearbook away every time they hand it to her. It's just a repeat joke over and over and over and over again.
Yeah. But you know, I appreciate her for what she is. She's someone that gives hope to mediocre actors everywhere. You know who else is in this?
Who?
Lauren Ambrose.
Lauren Ambrose. She was great.
She's so good in everything she's ever done. She's one of those people, though, who has been 27 for her entire career. I'm not sure how she does it. She's probably a vampire. Maybe she's just like a hermit. She seals herself, goes into stasis between projects. She then went on to do 6 Feet Under, which also featured Freddie Rodriguez.
Oh, he's great.
Peter, is it Facinelli or Fasinelli?
Both.
And Eric Balfour. Eric Balfour plays her boyfriend in 6 Feet Under. I don't remember what Peter What's His Bucket did.
What's his bucket?
But that's interesting that you could take a film with overall such mediocre acting driving it forward and then have so many people go on to do such a great show.
Yeah, that's a great show. We've been meaning to get back to it for a while.
I love that show.
So we didn't really talk about Seth Green and Lauren Ambrose's story, but for the most part, Seth Green, he plays a character named Kenny, and his sole purpose is to get laid. Because he talks about how he got into UCLA and 92% of the student body at UCLA are sexually active, and he needs to learn 20 different ways to make women call him El Papi.
El Papi. He has a backpack full of sex supplies.
The pleasure kit.
chest. It's his pleasure chest.
And he ends up locked into a bathroom after he's getting ready. He finds someone who's willing to like have sex with him because she just got dumped and cheated on. So she's like, I'm going to have sex with the first person who talks to me. And so he dives on that grenade and he's getting ready. He's like doing like exercises and pelvic thrusts.
He's limbering up like a cheetah.
He ends up locked in a bathroom upstairs because he helps the host solve some problem. And she warns him, hey, don't close the bathroom door or you're going to get stuck. So he leaves the bathroom door slightly open. Lauren Ambrose's character barges in because she hates being at the party.
She gives no Fs.
So she just goes upstairs, slams the door, and they're stuck in there. So they actually kind of rehash some of their childhood drama. They used to be best friends, and they realize they still deeply care for each other. And they both kind of talk about all the rumors they spread about each other because they still deeply cared about each other. And then they end up sleeping together.
In the bathroom.
Yeah.
It's, you know, what I really like about these scenes is that it talks about something that happens so often in high school. Like, kids will get to high school and think of it as a fresh start, and for the most part kind of go full bore into a new persona. Mm-hmm. And then they get to the end of high school and they're like, well, that didn't work out for me. I guess I can drop the act now. And so we're seeing all these kids kind of at that turning point in their life, and both of those characters are there. They're reaching a point where, you know, they've put up these walls and they each have their different version of a facade, and this is their opportunity to reconnect with who they really are as a person, and they find that there's still a soft spot for each other.
Well, it's also interesting, this kind of post-graduation party. There are a lot of movies like this. Actually, it is a lot like that. I remember we had our sober grad night after graduating high school, and there were two different girls who I had never really talked to in high school. Like, I knew who they were, and they came up to me at this sober grad night and like told me they had crushes on me, but there was like, there's that social hierarchy and there's certain things, like you don't talk to people outside of your group and everything like that. It is strange,
It's
but
when
things
you
like this
shoot your
happen.
shot, because if you get turned down, you're probably not going to have to see them again.
Exactly.
But if it pays off, hey.
Yeah, so like that happens. So I think that part of this movie is actually very accurate to
Yeah,
how life actually happens.
The desperation and the, well, go big or go home.
Right.
I think, and for a lot of people, this might be one of the only times in their life when they do get that opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we've got two kind of major subplots left, and then we can kind of just talk about some highlights, I think. Mike's story, he is basically just the jock. He decides he wants to break up with Jennifer Love Hewitt because he thinks he's going to go bang a bunch of college girls.
Because again, something like 96% of college honeys are sexually active.
And so he convinces his crew, which Freddie Rodriguez is part of the crew, to break up with the girls, their girlfriends this summer, so that way they can be in a pact. And then each one of the boyfriends, each one of his friends has a reason not to. So one of them, the parents are going to be out of town for the whole summer, so he's going to be able to have sex the whole summer. So why he's going to break up with his hot girlfriend. And then the other two, their girlfriends bought them Pearl Jam tickets for the end of the summer, so they can't break up with the girls because then they won't get to go to see Pearl Jam. And so one by one, they all end up breaking the pact. And then you run into Jerry O'Connell, who's a year older than them and comes back from college and says, I haven't been laid since college. Like, he had the same game plan.
And I love that it was Jerry O'Connell and that he was already getting a little puffy.
He did this in a lot of movies. He did this in this movie. I think he also did the same exact thing in The New Guy and in Dude, Where's My Car?
Yeah.
He came back as like the guy who's just a couple years older than them and kind of washed up.
Used to be successful.
Exactly. And that's pretty much Mike's subplot. He has this big thing where he realizes he messed up, and so he does this desperate attempt to try to get Jennifer Love Hewitt back at the party, and she kind of like has her moment where she's like, F you, because the whole movie she's talking to different people saying like, I don't know who I am without him. Like, I've never been single since I've been, in high school, and my whole identity's been wrapped up. Like, she doesn't have much agency in this movie.
Not at all.
I think that's why we haven't really talked about her in this episode, just because there's nothing really going for her plot.
No, she's just pretty.
She's an accessory.
Do we even hear about where she's going to college or what she plans on studying or what she wants to do with her life?
No, so
not
at
a
all.
thing. Nothing about her extracurriculars, how she did in high school. It's all just a social status.
Exactly.
When it comes to
and
her.
that's what she says. So like, there's the only real things that pop up with her is some guy is kind of being like all sensitive and listening to her. It turns out that's her cousin, and he tries to kiss her, and that was weird. And then after that big blow up scene, when she finally stands up for herself, all these guys just start being like, we should get naked. Oh, we should bang. And just like, just really inappropriate come-ons. And finally, Ethan Embry's character.
Everyone's shooting their shot.
He goes on this whole journey where he's trying to get her the letter, and for whatever reason, things just keep happening. People are telling embarrassing stories about him.
And at the beginning of this, he hears Mandy play on the radio.
Right.
And he thinks it's a sign because Mandy, and that's sort of what solidifies his decision that he's going to take this journey and go for it.
Right.
And then we find out later that it's
Barry Manilow's birthday.
And they're going to play Mandy every hour on the hour. So then he's spiraling. He's realizing how delusional he's been. And then he ends up calling into a radio station for a contest because he wants to talk to Barry Manilow. And he finally gets him on the phone in this phone booth. And then Jenna Elfman shows up as an angel and hangs up on Barry Manilow.
Yep. Well, and it's funny. It's like, she gives some really good life advice, like, go out there, shoot your shot. Like, it's cool if you're in love with Barry Manilow, because she thinks he's trying to hit on Barry Manilow. And so he goes back to the party.
I like that she's open-minded, though. She's like,
she's a sex worker.
Everyone has their thing. She had a thing for
Scott Baio. So he goes back to the party after being shut down a bunch of times. Every time we go to talk to her, maybe the band starts playing, or somebody tells an embarrassing story, or the yearbook girl shows up. So every time he gets a chance to talk to Amanda, something intervenes. So he ends up seeing her kissing her cousin, not realizing what's going on. So he loses it.
No, he sees her being molested by her cousin.
Yeah, but he just sees her being kissed, and he's just like, son of a bitch. I mean, he's just devastated. So he leaves, goes on his old journey, and he comes back right after everyone's hitting on her. So she loses it, and she's like, "You're a creep. You're obsessing over me over some detail that probably wasn't even there," and just calls him out for being an incel, basically.
Yeah.
And so he leaves, and then you're just fate. She figures out that was him, and so she goes and finds him at the end of the movie, and everything's great. And that's basically this movie. And there's a really awkward, so she catches him as he's about to leave to go to Boston to go see Kurt Vonnegut, because that's his hero.
Oh God! Of course it is.
And so she sees him and apologizes because she didn't know him, which is weird. Like, it's super weird that she still pursues this.
Yeah.
So she goes, and then she's like, "Hey, I read your letter. It's really nice, and you know, do you have to leave right now? I'd like to get to know you." And he's like, "I guess I can take a later train." And then he kisses her, but it's super awkward.
It is really
And like,
awkward.
she looks uncomfortable. He looks uncomfortable. Like, I don't think this is the big closing the movie moment. Like, yeah, like victory. It was really
You're
uncomfortable.
like, oh, look at you two starting a relationship based off of absolutely nothing but
no
a letter.
connection. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a little weird.
It's creepy. And it kind of reinforces the sense of entitlement that a lot of, I think, high school and college age guys have, that just because they're super attracted to a woman and think they have a connection with her, that they have some kind of a right to her. I remember I was friends with this dude, and we were just like very casual friends. And I invited him out to lunch one day because I think our lunch breaks lined up. And at the end of our lunch, he kissed me. And I was like, I gotta go. Like, it was not welcome at all, and I had a boyfriend at the time, and I gave him zero cues that I was interested in him in that way. And then after the fact, he sent me this long, rambling email saying, "I wouldn't have kissed you so passionately if I had known you had a boyfriend, and I feel so used and cheated." Like, used
You feel
how?
used.
Used, like, because I wanted to be your friend? Well, sorry. But then, you know, the boyfriend, keylogged my computer and hacked into my email
Jesus
with my
Christ.
password and found that anyway. So that kind of self-terminated.
Oh my God.
Yeah, just douchebags all around there.
And so I had a friend. I'm not gonna drop his name.
My boyfriend found out about the incel who felt entitled to me and wanted to break up because he thought I cheated
This
on
is
him.
the thing. Like, I have a friend. I'm not gonna say who it is, but I have a friend that I went to middle school and high school with, who was obsessed with this girl all through middle school and high school. Objectively, she was a very attractive girl.
And objectively, he was objectifying her.
Exactly. But he built it up that she, like, a lot of guys thought she was gorgeous, but nobody was like, "Oh, I'm gonna be with her," and like, "I'm in love with her." Like, everyone's like, "Yeah, she's pretty hot." But he would talk about her almost every day on the bus. He would talk about her all the time. I don't remember what he did, but he tried to do what he thought was some big romantic gesture. It may have been a letter. It may have been giving her balloons or one of those like Valentine grams that the school will let you do. And he honestly thought he was going to end up with her someday. It was really weird. And they never had as far as I know, they didn't have any classes together. They never hung out, but he was convinced they were going to get married someday. Really weird. This is absolutely something that happens in real life.
Yeah, and, you know, maybe part of the reason it happens is because people see it on TV.
I don't disagree. Were there any highlights for you on this movie? Because some of the highlights I have were not main characters. They were just little side characters that only popped up a couple of times.
I thought it was funny how Kenny at one point ended up having a little internal monologue voiceover.
That's right.
He was one of the only characters that did that. It was odd that Preston had that one breaking the fourth wall that then never happened again in the film. And then Kenny had this little thing. Another side note about Kenny, his last name is Fisher, like Fisher and Sons, which is the mortuary from 6 Feet Under. Side note, Jason Segel also made a small appearance in this
is
as
his film debut.
A stoner eating watermelon.
So I actually really liked some of the side characters. So Breckin Meyer shows up as like the lead singer of a band who's supposed to be playing at this party, and he was actually dating the director and writer of this movie, and so he did this as an uncredited, just kind of guest thing. So he's the lead singer of the band, and he's dressed up like a Beatle. Donald Faison from Scrubs is the drummer, and he's credited as drummer boy. And so they kind of have like a fight because they all want to wear the band t-shirts, but the singer only wants to be dressed like a Beatle. And then Donald Faison wants to wear a hat. And so they have this back and forth.
Do you mean a beatnik?
What?
A beatnik.
No, he was dressed like the Beatle, like the fluffy flowing shirt and everything like what the Beatles wore in like the 60s.
Like the Sgt. Pepper's era Beatles.
Exactly.
Got it.
So he's wearing like that. And so Donald Faison's character says, you look like a white prince. And then Breckenmeyer goes back to Donald Faison and says, okay, Hootie, because he has the cowboy hat. And I just thought that was hilarious. I think that was two of the best jokes in the movie. And they were by side characters who each had maybe 2 or 3 lines in the whole movie. Like, it was a little weird that these characters had what I thought was one of the best points of humor.
Yeah, I feel like they might have had more scenes that were edited out because we get a culmination of the band's experience towards the end of the film. We get like a conflict resolution, and we didn't really see the conflict building.
Right, well, like, we just saw the conflict. Like, we didn't see the build. We just saw them break up, and then they're just back together at the end of the movie.
Break up and get back together. I thought it was funny that he also called that guy Hootie when the lead singer from Hootie and the Blowfish has now dedicated probably about 75% of his career to telling people that his name is not Hootie. Poor guy.
Yeah.
I don't even know his name.
I don't know his name either. So basically what happens at the end of the movie after everybody's stories kind of wrap up, they have like the little thing that happens in high school movies where they're like, this is what this person moved on to. And Preston and Amanda just got they are still together. And she wrote him a letter every day he was away seeing Kurt Vonnegut, which was like a 3-day seminar. And then you got one that was for Denise, which is Lauren Ambrose's character, and Kenny, played by Seth Green. And they just got a thing. They broke up 5 minutes after this scene.
And they got back together.
Yeah, they're 10 minutes later because they ran into each other in the bathroom. And then William, he went to MIT. He made a tech company, and he's super popular and rich. And then the jock guy he gained 40 pounds as a freshman and was kicked off the football team. And that's pretty much how the movie ends.
Yeah, it's, I was thinking about, actually I have a note that says, it feels like after the party ended, everyone just went home sad.
Yeah, kind of.
And that's just like so the high school experience. I think people kind of build up these events like their last blowout, and they think that the summer after is going to be this crazy life-changing experience. And for the most part, you work at Jamba Juice and you do nothing.
Yep. Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like this movie, and I don't know which came out first, but I feel like this was just a less successful She's All That.
Yeah, but also it was a product of its time.
Absolutely.
And audiences were not as discerning as they are now.
No.
This would last like a week and a half in theaters these days.
This is a Netflix movie now.
Yeah.
If the script came across the studio, they're like, okay, Netflix will buy this.
Yeah. And it's funny for the nostalgia. Like, I think it's worth watching mainly for the nostalgia and Jennifer Love Hewitt's boobs. And it's fun to see some actors who then became very big in, like Jason Segel, in probably even their first roles in something that actually made money. So that is fun, and I think it has a lot to offer in that department. Plus, Seth Green is always delightful.
He is good, consistently.
But what do you think? This one?
I'm torn, because I watched this movie every time it came on TV. I watched it at a birthday party for the first time, because everybody had to see this movie. And I remember really liking this movie as a kid, and definitely the Seth Green character. I definitely remember really liking him, finding him hilarious. The foreign exchange student. Everybody used to quote the foreign exchange.
Would you like to touch my penis?
It's funny we didn't bring him up at all during our discussion. And this movie was one of those movies that as I was watching it, I kept remembering what was about to happen right before it happened. Mm. So there's enough nostalgia there for me to like it, want to keep watching. But honestly, I thought it was kind of a bad movie. It held my attention enough to get through it, but I didn't really like it at the end of the movie.
Right. Watching it captured the 90s nostalgia. It had all those fun elements, a little too much Smash Mouth. But at the end, it was kind of a letdown. And you're left feeling, like when you reminisce about slightly unpleasant things.
Yeah.
It's that vibe.
I feel a little dirty watching it, honestly. It's weird. Like, I have a pit in my stomach because it's like I really wanted to like this one. We've been wanting to cover this for a while. And it really wasn't good. Like, this is one of the few actual childhood ruined, I'd say.
Yeah, it ruined our childhood of this, our childhood memories of this movie.
Yeah, I don't think I'll ever go back to this one.
Yeah, I'm good. Right. I mean, it might be worth it for Jennifer Love Hewitt's boobs, but
there are other movies like Heartbreakers where they're much more
on
that's display.
True. That's true. Have we covered Heartbreakers?
No. Or what was the horror movie she did? The
horror.
I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Oh,
there are so many better movies for looking at how hot Jennifer Love Hewitt is. Like, this was like
that don't have Ethan Embry in his stupid face. I think what bothered me most about him is he makes that same stupid face that Tobey Maguire makes in the entirety of the first Spider-Man movie, which happens to be what we're covering next.
Spider-Man from 2002 is turning 18 this month. It's an adult movie.
It's legal.
So yeah, that's it. Where can our listeners find you on the interwebs?
All over the internet at Katrina Ossity and Katrina Sherwood, but that's some boring stuff.
Check out her YouTube. Check out our podcast wherever you want to listen to it, YouTube, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Google Play. Check us out on social media, all at MDXpods, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thanks for listening.
Bye.